transition the business from one generation to the next. So it's way buried deep in the recesses, that, if at all, when you're first getting started out. But once you're into it, it sneaks up on you in a hurry, because those years and decades go by quickly. You start to realize, hey, I've been doing this for 27 years. Now what?
Yeah, like that the couple of siblings there, Donald and Eric from Wycliffe, who are trying to transition their company from their father who started it.
That's right.
Okay, where do we leave? Where do we leave the break?
All right, so we were talking about the transition, and how do you know what to tell the next generation, how to let it out to them so they can absorb it and digest it, and then finally, how do you know that they've got it so that you can then step away? And so, first of all, I said before we get to that, we got to figure out, how do you know who to choose? If it's only one, let's say child who's there, you have a son or a daughter who's there, it usually becomes pretty apparent who should be the one taking it over.
We eventually take a quarter and bring everyone around the table and flip it.
Ooh. I prefer rock, scissors, paper personally than quarters.
Okay.
At least it adds a little bit of skill to it, right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
So you do that. Usually you get best 2 out of 3.
Mm-hmm.
Give you a shot to miss one and kind of still win. That could work.
How do you do that, Adam?
You sit down and have some adult conversations.
Boy, that seems to be a rarity today, having adult conversations. But no, that's what you do.
Right.
I agree with that.
So you have to talk about it, just from the standpoint of what you're thinking about, and you may not need to determine who's going to be the one. And often is the case the parents want to be, another one of your favorite words, Jack. I'm hitting all your buzzwords today. They want to be fair.
Oh boy!
Right?
What
they
does
want
that
to be
mean?
fair.
I don't know what that word means.
Well, usually that means equal in their minds.
According to who?
Right.
According to the first one who says it.
Right. So
there's a big advantage, by the way. The first one who says, "Hey, let's be fair," they have the advantage, because now I can't say it if I wasn't the first one.
No, you can just discuss what they mean by that, because fair to me and fair to you could be very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
So start to have those kind of discussions. What do you kind of want? If you've had, let's assume that for this case that those kids are already in the business, so you've had a chance to kind of see how they perform things that they do. We have a lot of those circumstances, versus them being on the outside trying to bring them in. That here they are operating day to day as part of the business.
That's a big difference. That's a big difference of who you're trying to pass the company on to. Has worked there for a number of years, especially.
Yeah, you've had a sense of how they approach the world, how they kind of do what they do. You have a sense of what they're maybe pretty good at, maybe not so good at.
You improve your odds considerably of success, if that's the case.
And it's okay. It's okay to transition to more than one. But as we often will talk to our clients, we have many clients who are partners. Somebody's got to be in charge.
Very true.
And that's where it becomes, often a difficult discussion. But again, what happens is, if you actually have the discussion, if you have both the parents involved and the siblings involved, let's talk about it. Usually, you'd be surprised how quickly you come to a conclusion.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it comes down to, because it hasn't been talked about, somebody always has the decision made in their mind, and until it is talked about and you can reflect and look at each other at the same time, it comes out. Yeah, I agree.
Right. And to make a very simple sports analogy, at the end of the game, we're going to run up a play, and who wants that last shot? Who wants the ball? Well, not everybody wants the ball.
That's right.
Maybe okay being the one kind of passing it in or running a screen or being a decoy, but to be the one to catch the ball and shoot it and try to take that shot, not everybody wants that ball, and that's okay too. But a lot of times that comes out as part of these discussions. Often there'll be one sibling who really wants that final shot, who wants to be the one in charge.
So what happens if they both want it, Adam? Both digging in. You can see those heel marks grinding into the carpet.
Right.
So now what do we do?
Well, we got to figure out who should be the one in charge. And if it comes down to it, we've had cases too where you spend some time trying to figure out who should really be in charge, who's really taking over. It may be the point where one winds up leaving, if they can't get along and be able to kind of work together.
Well, the founder, the owner, the current owner will call it the father or mother, whoever is in that position, they know way down deep. They have the parental issue of trying to be equitable and split everything 50-50. That's their initial thought, to use that term you used before, fair, in their mind. But they know way down deep that one really is better than the other for taking the ball here.
And there's all sorts of different workarounds that can happen. We had a case a few years back where we had this where both siblings were working in the company. One had been there for a little bit longer, but they also had a separate company that involves some real estate, which is not atypical. You may have the business with as one entity, and then you have some real estate as a second entity. And so what they decided pretty early on is they wanted to, maybe instead of fighting over who's going to be in charge of what, they said, well, why don't you each take one of those? One will be in charge of the business side, one will be in charge of the real estate side. And even though we kind of knew that the one
Had been around
kid who'd been around for a while, but also was more likely to be the one to kind of take charge. So what happened was, this one sibling now took over for the business, while the other one was kind of in charge of the real estate. But the parents kept coming to the other sibling who's in charge of the business to ask for his help or guidance or insights on the real estate side too, because he was very good at getting stuff done. He is in our favorite DISC parlance, the DISC behavior assessment parlance, he was a pretty strong D. And so D's are very good at getting stuff done and kind of making decisions and kind of pushing things along. Whereas the other sibling, even though he was basically kind of given that real estate piece, he really didn't want it. And I say that because of his actions.
Yeah, that's very it reinforces those feelings.
Right. So, but what has to happen? I think one of the things you're talking about, Jack, in terms of what the parents or the owners have to do. There's some tough choices you have to make as an owner, and this may be one of your final tough choices. Is you got to figure out, hey, this is the one who should be in charge. And it's not done based on favorites from when you were kids or something like that. Again, it's based on what they've done as part of the company, what you see for the company going forward, what's best for the organization going forward.
Many owners don't think like that. The emotion that comes across with these very difficult decisions kind of precludes the decision making here. It fogs it up. It doesn't allow it to be made well. So coming back to your osmosis and death as two choices, and that adult situation or adult conversation doesn't ever really take place in many of these situations. So many of these companies that you were quoting in your statistics don't make it because they don't have this adult conversation in many situations like that. Right. So it drifts, and death and osmosis basically resolve the issue. And it's never really resolved well because there's fighting that go on. And nothing can be worse for the health of a company when families start to feud here.
Well, one of the challenges can be, and this is, we talked to a lot of employees who, tell me, gee, I wish I had that problem of being in the, being born into the right family name kind of thing, where all of a sudden it's kind of there. And trust me, it's no picnic being that kid in the business. There's certain pressures and things. It's hard to say no often to the to your parents or the owners who are there. It's a tough spot to be in. And one of the challenges that we encourage people to embrace here is that you don't need to be like the current owners in terms of how you approach things and what your style is like. You have to kind of be yourself. That's a big part of this. But it's a tough spot to be in. It's a tough spot where people assume that the only reason you're there is because you have the right last name or the right, you married into the right family, whatever it might be. People are assuming that that's the case. So it's a tough spot for them to be in. And so it's important for that to be able to keep that in mind. And part of the open discussions, that's where you have to, as you're talking to the team, here's why we're choosing. Because there might be cases too where you may have somebody who's non-family that you might choose to be the one to take over.
Well, if I'm the owner of a company, Adam, and I have two sons here, and I'm debating which one should get it. I'm not really debating. That's an overused word. It's another word to add to the archives here of crazy words. But if I'm considering who's going to take this, how do I do that? When do we talk about that? We're going to take a break here pretty soon, and
I think you're asking in terms of who's in charge. Again, from an ownership standpoint, the ownership stuff can be broken out to where it's close to being equal. We don't, we never advise equal ownership, but maybe 51-49. But so they can both still own it, because owning and then operating and managing is very different, which gets confused as we know all the time with a small company.
I'm talking
about
more.
who's taking the
more
lead?
of how do I make this choice of who really should be the next boss of this company?
I thought you mentioned the coin flip.
I did.
Oh, okay.
That's
And I was going with the rock, scissors, paper. That wasn't.
No,
Oh, we didn't
that's,
conclude
that's
that.
that's on the table also.
All
So we
right.
got two of those sitting on the table.
Okay. We got
But
to choose which one.
I'm going to bet one good way is to watch at least over 6 months, ideally a year or so. Watch how they present. Watch how each of the people considered to take over this company over the course of a year. Watch how they present the business of the company on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis. How do they do it with knowledge and confidence? And am I, as a business owner, even in a position to judge that? Well, if you have good experience and you understand the business side, going back to that, comment that you made 25 minutes ago, we can now make that judgment that, hey, sibling A or sibling B really has this business guy. I mean, they have it. They have control of it. They know how to do it. There's no decision that can't be made now.
That's a good point, Jack. Why don't we delve into that when we get back?